Much.
We're going to take you live to the floor of the House of Representatives for morning business, and a couple of notes. Members of the congressional leadership will be at the White House in about a half hour to meet with the President as the President outlines his own budget blueprint. Live coverage at 1:35 Eastern Time on C-SPAN 3 and C-SPAN Radio.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., April 13, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Rob Woodall to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority or minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Roybal Allard, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, this week during Alcohol Awareness Month, I will introduce what I believe is the next logical step in federal efforts to prevent underage drinking. My bill, the Reauthorization of the Sober Truth on Preventing Underage Drinking Act, builds on the successful public health efforts of the original bill, better known as the STOP Act. Since the STOP Act became law in 2006, there has been increased community efforts to address underage drinking as a public health crisis, and we have seen localized improvement in teen drinking statistics. While these positive results are encouraging, the fact remains alcohol still is the primary drug of choice of our youth. In 2009, about 10.4 million teens aged 12 to 20 reported drinking alcohol in the past month. Of these, approximately 6.9 million were binge drinkers and 2.1 million were heavy drinkers. Alarmingly, according to the latest publication of the Monitoring the Future survey, 53.7% of 12th graders believe drinking 5 or more alcoholic beverages once or twice each weekend is not a significant risk. These facts leave little doubt about the need to continue federal underage drinking prevention efforts to educate our society about the dangers of alcohol abuse among our youth. The STOP Act reauthorization bill will continue the successful programs of the original STOP Act, including the anti-underage drinking national media campaign directed at parents, the coordination of federal efforts through the Interagency Council, and the grant program to help communities address underage drinking. As a result of the recent research, the bill also directs the Institute of Medicine to report on the impact of drinking alcohol on the development of the adolescent brain, and it establishes grants to train pediatric health care providers on how best to screen and treat children and teens who have had alcohol exposures. Mr. Speaker, continuing the investment of the STOP Act is a cost-effective strategy to reduce the $53 billion annual cost of underage drinking to our nation. Most importantly, it will reduce the suffering, the violence, and death that far too often are caused by underage drinking. I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor the STOP Act reauthorization bill and keep our country moving forward in addressing this public health crisis facing our youth. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Ross-Slayton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise this morning to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Bay of Pigs operation. On April 17, 1961, the anti-communist patriots of Brigade 2506 were determined to help their homeland and their loved ones who were living under a repressive regime. Even though the operation was not successful, the dedication and the commitment that these brave individuals illustrated during the conflict was exceptional. During the operation, one hero was asked if he wished to be evacuated, and he said, "I will never leave this country." These individuals showed a strong sense of heroism as they were up against the repressive regime's armed forces. President Ronald Reagan was a long-standing supporter of individuals taking action to free themselves from oppressive socialist and communist regimes. When referring to the Bay of Pigs, President Reagan stated, quote, "By supporting courageous freedom fighters around the world, we're shining a light on the path out from communism," end quote. These heroes reached the beaches of Playa Girón to fight against communism in Cuba that was being supported by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The evil empire made a strong push into Cuba that became a national security threat to the United States. A strong Soviet Union presence in Cuba led to the Cuban Missile Crisis. The intrusion cemented the dangers of the Soviet Union having very close ties to the Cuban regime. Democracy and liberty of the people in the Western Hemisphere were in severe jeopardy as the communist forces were looking to expand their control. But the will of the freedom-loving people who seek a better future will not be deterred by the evils and the power of communism. The protection of human rights and freedom of expression are fundamental necessities of a free society. As the spread of communism crumbled during the Cold War, democracies throughout the Western Hemisphere flourished in open societies. However, the United States must remain vigilant that history does not repeat itself. At this moment, Russia is currently infiltrating the Western Hemisphere by joining forces with anti-democratic tyrants such as Chavez, Ortega, and Morales. Recently, reports have indicated that Russia has sold $15 billion worth of weapons and military equipment to Chavez. In addition, senior Russian military officials have mentioned the possibility of establishing refueling bases for Russian bombers in Cuba. Russian activities in the Western Hemisphere raise serious concerns as they are arming rogue regimes that are counter to the interests and the security of our beloved nation. The veterans of the Bay of Pigs symbolize this struggle between communism and freedom. The brave Brigade 2506 patriots decided to risk their very lives in order to liberate an oppressed society. These men fought courageously on that historic day, came from many backgrounds, but all of them cared about freedom and liberty for the people of Cuba. Even though the Bay of Pigs operation was not successful, their call to serve rose again to protect our nation from enemies abroad. Many of these veterans continued to serve the United States by joining our armed forces and fighting with honor during the Vietnam War. I would like to acknowledge all individuals who consistently are working toward fulfilling the dreams of a free Cuba, which is the dream of the veterans of the Brigade 2506 who aspired and fought for a free and democratic Cuba. I would also like to recognize the veterans of the Bay of Pigs who are with us today in the gallery. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your sacrifice and your commitment for a free Cuba and a strong United States. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair would remind members not to make reference to occupants of the gallery. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Chu, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the memory of Harry Liu. Harry Liu was a Marine serving the mission of operating enduring freedom in Afghanistan. Freedom, however, does not come without a price. Harry Liu died in Afghanistan on Sunday, April 3, 2011. He was 21 years old. He was the son of Sandy and Alan Liu, the sister of Carmen Liu, and he was my nephew. Lance Corporal Harry Liu died while serving on watch duty in Helmand Province. He had joined the Marines in August 2009 and reported to his unit in February 2010. He was based in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, with the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force. His unit was deployed to the Middle East in November, where they joined a Marine combat team for counterinsurgency work with the Afghan National Security Forces. Their goal was to provide security to locals and to promote development in the regime. He was set to return home on July 2011, 3 months before his death. Harry was a popular and outgoing student both at Santa Clara High School, where he graduated in June 2008, and at Mission College, where he took classes for a year. He was known for joking, smiling, and for wanting to keep the mood light. One of his teachers said he brought life and laughter to the classroom. He loved physical sports, especially tricking, a form of breakdancing involving kicks, flips, and twists. It combines wushu, Chinese martial arts, and gymnastics. He was so accomplished in this sport that, as a member of a club called the Sidestep Breakdance Club, he performed several times in front of the high school. His friends said his best trick was the butterfly twist, where one spins 360 degrees in a horizontal flip. Upon his death, his friends honored him with a tricking session at his high school. Harry's best friend, Travis Trotter, said, "Everyone here has been influenced by him in some way or another, whether it be through his dancing, his artistic talent, his tricking, or just being the person he was, friendly with everyone." Of his service, his superior in the Marines said, quote, "Only a small portion of our society volunteers to serve their country. Lance Corporal Liu was one of those volunteers. Within the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, he was well liked by his fellow Marines and was known for getting along with everyone because of his easygoing nature. He took his job seriously and performed his duties with enthusiasm. In Afghanistan, he volunteered for the difficult missions and demonstrated uncommon endurance on a 4 to 8 hour foot patrol. Lance Corporal Liu also demonstrated his commitment and courage on 2 separate occasions when his unit came under enemy fire. One of those events is captured in the following. At approximately 7:30 p.m. on March 21, 2011, 3rd Squad of 3rd Platoon Golf Company's 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines was engaged by enemy small arms fire while defending a position in Garagi Village, Nawi-Barazgai District, Helmand Province, in Afghanistan. The enemy engaged with several bursts of automatic weapons fire. At the time of contact, the majority of the squad was in a small hole in the ground, taking cover to eat evening chow. Lance Corporal Liu immediately identified the enemy position approximately 200 meters to the southeast and engaged the enemy position initially with an M203 grenade launcher located at his post. He then picked up his M249 squad automatic weapon and engaged the enemy with an estimated 200 rounds until they had had enough and broke contact. His squad then continued with their mission. This is an example of Lance Corporal Liu's service. It serves as a reminder of all those who today serve in harm's way. Like Lance Corporal Liu, they serve to protect our country, our freedom, and our way of life. I am grateful for the courage and sacrifice of Lance Corporal Liu," unquote. Harry Liu was a good son and brother, a friend to many, a great performer, and a dedicated soldier. His ready smile and warm attitude will be remembered by all who knew him. His sacrifice for his country will never be forgotten. For his service, Harry Liu will be honored with the National Defense Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and the Afghanistan Campaign Medal.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Desjardins, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Lance Corporal Andrew Paul Carpenter, who tragically lost his life while bravely serving our country. Andrew enlisted in the United States Marine Corps on September 7, 2007, where he was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. In August of 2010, Andrew was deployed to Afghanistan for the second time, where he bravely served on the front lines during combat operations. While patrolling the Helmand Province in Afghanistan, Lance Corporal Carpenter sustained fatal combat-related injuries and died on February 19, 2011. Andrew graduated in 2002 from Columbia Central High School in Columbia, Tennessee. He was active in the school's marching band, where he played the trombone and helped the band win a state championship during his senior year. Andrew went on to further his education at Middle Tennessee State University. He enjoyed numerous activities such as playing golf, soccer, and paintball, and made friends easily through his dependable and loyal nature. He is remembered by those who knew him as someone who constantly was looking for ways to help those in need. It is no wonder that serving the United States Marine Corps was a natural choice for him. Before joining the Marines, Andrew worked at the YMCA Fund Company, where he pursued one of the things that he enjoyed most in life, working with children. Andrew would often dress up in Batman costumes to entertain kids at the YMCA after-school program. He was known for his tender heart and his ability to positively impact the children that he encountered. On January 1st, 2010, Andrew married the love of his life, Chrissy. She was truly his best friend and soulmate, and he would often say that their wedding day was by far the best day of his life. Shortly before Andrew was deployed to Afghanistan, he and Chrissy learned that they would be blessed with a baby boy, Landon Paul Carpenter, who was born March 18, 2011. Landon, no words can sufficiently express the gratitude or repay the debt that we owe your father for his selfless service in protecting our great nation. He laid down his life so that we may all be blessed with our nation's most fundamental tenets: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Your father, simply put, is a true American hero. As you grow up in this great nation, know that you are given that privilege because of men like your father who make great sacrifices to protect our freedoms. Chrissy, during this difficult time, I hope that you can find some solace in the fact that your husband nobly gave his life so that you and your son can continue to live in the land of the free. And finally, thank you to the Andrews family for raising such an extraordinary young man. Today we honor and remember Andrew Paul Carpenter. We will never forget the sacrifices he made in order to ensure that we continue to be blessed with the precious gift of freedom. God bless America. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have heard from two members on each side of the aisle who, without respect, of course, to any partisan differences, raised their voices in sadness about the loss of two of our brave Americans in the defense of freedom. I join their sentiments. Let me say this, Mr. Speaker. Those two Americans whose lives we have now lost showed extraordinary courage, extraordinary honesty in their willingness to serve. We in this body will now be called upon to show such courage and honesty as we address the extraordinary fiscal crisis that confronts us. Today, President Obama is speaking on a plan to confront our nation's unsustainable deficits. I believe it will stand in stark contrast to the budget that's going to be offered by Mr. Ryan. A budget of disastrous priorities, in my opinion, that concentrates its plan on middle and working class Americans in terms of its cuts, while creating yet another windfall for the wealthiest in our country. At a time when income inequality is at a height we haven't seen since the 1920s. The Republican budget ends Medicare as we know it, transforming a system of guaranteed health care into a system that provides seniors with less coverage and greater expenses year after year after year. It dismantles Medicaid, putting seniors' nursing home care at very substantial risk and, in fact, with an inability to pay, and cutting off care for disabled and poor Americans. These entitlements must be addressed, but we must address them in a way that both keeps them sustainable and makes them available for generations to come. Somehow, however, after undermining the social compact of Medicare, after cutting care for the most vulnerable, after sending more than 30 million Americans back to the ranks of the uninsured, the Republican budget finds trillions of dollars to give as tax cuts to the wealthiest among us. Republicans say we're too broke to afford the promise of Medicare, but we are flush enough to spend trillions in tax cuts for those of us who are the best off. In fact, the Republican budget spends so much on corporate subsidies and tax breaks for the wealthy and loses so many savings by repealing the cost controls in the Affordable Care Act that it fails to balance the budget for 10 years or even 20 years. We've been down this so-called path to prosperity before. It leads to skyrocketing deficits because the supply-side dogma that lower taxes mean higher revenues has proven false over the last 3 decades. Read the facts. If Republican tax dogma made sense, then our debt would not have increased 200% under Ronald Reagan, or 115% under the second President Bush. But they did. In fact, we've seen Republican promises of prosperity proven wrong time and time again over the 30 years that I have served here in Congress. In 2007, now Majority Leader Cantor said that the Bush tax cuts, quote, have spurred spectacular economic growth. That was in 2007. Let me remind all the members of this body, it was in December 2007 we fell into the Great Recession, the deepest recession we've had since Herbert Hoover. The growth was spectacular only for the top 1%. But for the rest of America, the Bush economy produced what the Wall Street Journal called, and I quote, the worst track record for job creation since the government began keeping records. That's what the Wall Street Journal said of the Bush economic program, which Mr. Cantor said would be a job creator. Throughout the Bush years, middle-class income stayed stagnant and deficits soared. What did Republicans say about a budget that actually helped create unprecedented prosperity? The 1993 Clinton budget. Here's what now Speaker Boehner said. Quote, how does this create any new real jobs? Who does this spending stimulate? Except maybe the liberal faculty at Harvard or Berkeley. Of course, contrary to the Speaker's assertion, the Clinton years saw the biggest production of jobs since I have been serving in Congress, 22.7 million new jobs. In the private sector, almost 21 million jobs, as opposed to the private sector loss of jobs under President Bush. About 7,000 loss of jobs per month versus 216,000 new jobs every month on average under Bill Clinton. Those words represent the same flawed priorities we see in this new Republican budget. Tax breaks for the wealthy, a failure to invest in the future, and a heavier burden on working families. Our country deserves better, Mr. Speaker. Let's reform our entitlement programs with a scalpel, not an axe. Let's look for savings in every part of the budget, defense included. Let's close tax loopholes, but let's also use the tax code to reduce the deficit and ensure that all of us, even the most privileged, pay their fair share. Republicans have taken us down this primrose path before, Mr. Speaker. It has demonstrably led to higher debt, stagnation for working Americans, and most recently, an economic implosion. We must not choose that dead end again. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Cravat, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today and I would like to offer my congratulations to the players, coaches, and supporters of the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs men's ice hockey team for their historic victory this past Saturday on April 9th, 2011. The dramatic fashion of Kyle Smith, who grew up just minutes from Duluth in Hermantown, Minnesota, scored the game-winning goal with 3 minutes and 22 seconds into overtime, and the Bulldogs, with their first championship in the school history, won by a score of 3-2 over the University of Michigan. The thrilling win culminated a fantastic season for UMD's men's ice hockey team, with the Bulldogs amassing an impressive victory of record of 26-10-6. The NCAA hockey title win comes at the same academic year as the NCAA Division II football title for the Bulldogs, making the University of Minnesota Duluth just the second college ever to win both a hockey title and a football title in the same academic year. Mr. Speaker, that's quite a feat. I now speak to the 8th District and for all Minnesotans to say that how proud we are of our Bulldogs and to have the NCAA championship trophy back in the state of hockey, Minnesota. And I yield back, sir.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Sanchez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise this morning to address the House and the American people regarding the Korea Free Trade Agreement and its effect on working families. Let me start by saying that I'm committed to trade. Trade can benefit our nation, our businesses, and our working families. In fact, I'm a member of President Obama's Export Council. Our goal is to double American exports in 5 years, not to export American jobs. But the problem with our current trade policy, the one that started with NAFTA and has gone downhill from there, is that its benefits are skewed. The benefits are concentrated in a few powerful multinational corporations, and it's hardworking middle-class families who pay the price. The Korea FTA doesn't fall far from the NAFTA tree. A few stock prices and CEO bonuses may go up, but the Korea FTA will kill jobs, push down American wages, and drive small American companies who face unfair competition out of business. Perhaps the biggest problem with the Korea FTA is that it opens the door for more illegal trade from China. Members on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the FTA debate have concerns about trading with China. We all know that China manipulates its currency, doesn't protect intellectual property, and engages in illegal transshipment to escape U.S. tariffs. You can go on the internet right now and find websites bragging that they can hide the source of Chinese goods and thereby avoid paying duties owed to the U.S. The illegal transshipment, mislabeling, and duty evasion rob the American people of money that were owed. They also drive U.S. businesses out of business. U.S. businesses often go to great lengths and expense to prove that Chinese goods are being dumped and receiving illegal subsidies. When the duties the U.S. imposes aren't paid, hardworking Americans lose their jobs when their workplaces shut their doors forever. From New York to South Carolina to Linwood, California, in my own district, American businesses have turned off the lights and sent workers home due to unfair Chinese competition. And China doesn't even have to break the rules to reap the benefits of the Korea FTA. This agreement, which was negotiated by President Bush, only requires that 35% of a Korean car be made in Korea to be eligible for tariff benefits. That means that 65% of the car can be made in China by child labor, prison labor, and workers who lack the right to form free and independent unions. America has lost about 7.5 million jobs since the recession began. We cannot afford another job-killing trade agreement that ignores America's middle-class families. We have learned some very hard lessons after more than 15 years of NAFTA-style free trade agreements. We've heard many promises, just like the promises we're hearing about the Korea FTA. But the fact is that there are failures. NAFTA was supposed to solve illegal immigration by developing a robust economy in Mexico that would allow hard-working people to provide for their families by staying home. That didn't work. CAFTA was supposed to include bold new safety and wage protections for workers, but these protections are disappointingly weak, allowing countries to downgrade their own labor laws. And in the Oman FTA, the administration actually negotiated a deal with a country that, as our own State Department reported, was experiencing a forced labor problem. Forced labor. How are our American families supposed to care for their families and send their kids to college when they're competing with forced labor? Free trade was supposed to increase economic opportunity for everybody, for big businesses as well as small, and for hardworking families at home and abroad. This has not happened. Too many communities have been left to rot because corporations shut down U.S. plants to chase increasingly cheap labor and weak environmental standards abroad. After 15 years of living with NAFTA and its clones, real wages for American families are down. Our trade deficit is in the tens of billions of dollars. Our manufacturing base is falling apart. The American worker is now more productive than before, but that increased productivity has not led to higher wages. The truth is, the NAFTA free trade models favor the wealthiest few and the corporate fat cats at the expense of small businesses, workers, families, and our communities. In the coming weeks and months, we will be asked to consider at least 2 of the Bush administration's trade deals with Korea and Colombia. Despite the long record of failed FTAs, we are going to hear that there is a consensus of support for these FTAs. We'll hear that anyone who knows anything about trade supports these agreements. Don't believe it, because it's not true. Advocates for America's families, both inside and outside of Congress, have grave concerns. We want a new path that creates real opportunities for workers and the businesses that employ them. We want trade agreements that don't sell our environment short, close doors for our children, or substitute the judgment of international trade lawyers for our courts. I thank the Chair, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Wolf, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring to the attention of the House legislation I am introducing to create an Afghanistan-Pakistan study group modeled after the Iraq study group to bring fresh eyes to the war effort in Afghanistan, which is now in its 10th year. Last August, I began pressing the administration to convene an Afghanistan-Pakistan study group. While reticent at first, to their credit, President Bush and Secretary of State Rice and Defense Secretary Rumsfeld came to support the Iraq study group, ably led by bipartisan chairs, former Secretary of State James Baker and former Congressman Lee Hamilton. It has been my hope that the Obama administration would come to view this bipartisan fresh eyes approach as something which is ultimately good for our men and women in uniform and good for the country as a whole. Aside from the specific policy recommendations, the Iraq Study Group helped force a moment of truth in our national conversation about the war effort. It was apparent last summer, and is still truer today, that with roughly 100,000 U.S. troops presently in Afghanistan, no clear end is in sight to our nation's longest-running war in 10 years and counting. Public support for the war is at an all-time low. A national conversation about Afghanistan is what is urgently needed. Before proposing this idea to the Obama administration, I spoke with a number of knowledgeable individuals, including former senior diplomats, public policy experts, and retired and active duty military. Many believed, all believed, our Afghanistan policy was adrift, and there was near unanimous positions that an Afghanistan-Pakistan study group was needed. Among those distinguished individuals who embraced the idea was former Ambassador to Iraq, Ryan Crocker. Sadly, the war has remained distant for many Americans. It is rarely spoken of from the presidential bullet pope. In fact, a recent Fox News piece reported, quote, the last time Obama specifically devoted a full public speech to Afghanistan was December 9, 2009, 16 months ago, when he announced at West Point that he was sending an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to that war-torn country. And this Congress ought to be looking at this also. Further, the war is seldom covered in great depth in the news, and yet, for the husbands and wives and mothers and fathers, sons and daughters who have sent off a loved one in uniform, the war in Afghanistan is anything but distant. It is uncertainty and sacrifice. It is separation and worry, and many times it is life and death. Despite my several letters to the President and other senior administration officials calling for a, quote, vigorous and thoughtful and principled debate and discussion about some of our nation's greatest minds, the idea for the study group has languished. And so today, after the Obama administration has neglected this, I am introducing legislation to create an Afghan-Pakistan study group comprised of nationally known and respected individuals who love their country more than they love their political party, and who, what I believe, serve to provide much-needed clarity to a policy that appears adrift at best and highly politicized at worst. In reading Obama's War, I was deeply troubled by Bob Woodward's reporting, which indicated that discussions of the war strategy were infused with political calculations. Woodward also wrote of an administration that wrestled with the most basic question about the war. What is the mission? What are we trying to do? What will work? These are questions that demand answers. I believe that Americans of all political viewpoints can embrace this fresh eyes approach, for it is always, always to our national interest to openly assess the challenges before us and to chart a clear course to success. I urge my colleagues to join me in support of this legislation. This Congress, both political parties, cannot do what this administration is doing. We cannot ignore this issue. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Schwartz, for 5 minutes.
Permission to address the body for 5 minutes and rise and extend.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. For decades, Medicare has been a lifeline for older Americans, providing quality and affordable health care for all seniors. But this week, House Republicans are proposing to strip seniors of this guaranteed benefit. The Republican budget proposal dismantles Medicare as we know it, telling seniors they are going to be on their own to find insurance no matter what the cost or how sick they are. And it slashes Medicaid coverage for seniors who need long-term care, threatening our sickest, most frail elderly in nursing homes with no care at all. This is absolutely the wrong approach to solving our nation's budget problems. Every day, 48 million elderly and disabled Americans across this country count on Medicare for their life-saving medications, doctor visits, and hospital care. 69% of people over the age of 65, and they are both Democrats and Republicans, oppose Medicare becoming a voucher program. Seniors know that changing Medicare to a voucher program means that they will no longer have access to a guaranteed set of health benefits, that the value of a limited voucher won't keep up with rising health care costs, that the voucher would become insufficient over time, and the care they need could become unaffordable, that too many taxpayer dollars will be spent on advertising campaigns and administrative costs instead of actual medical expenses. And seniors know that privatizing Medicare means limits on benefits, obstacles to care, uncertain reimbursements, co-payments for primary care or specialty care, exclusions for certain services, discrimination based on income, illness, or age, and more uncertainty if a serious illness or need for long-term care occurs. Seniors know that privatizing or voucherizing Medicare will mean that they pay more in premium or do without. And it doesn't end there. In addition to Medicare cuts, Republicans also want to take away Medicaid for the nearly 6 million seniors who depend on it for nursing home or long-term care. They say proudly that they will cut funding to states by $1 trillion. This means that disabled and frail elderly Americans will be placed on waiting lists for services or have no access to care at all. In Pennsylvania, my home state, nearly 40% of funds spent on long-term care would be at risk. This includes 62% of nursing home residents and 25,000 Pennsylvania seniors who receive home health services. And yet, when Republicans had the opportunity to reduce costs while maintaining and strengthening care for our seniors, they demonized the plan, voting time and again to stop important improvements in Medicare. And they still want to repeal the law that eliminates co-payments for preventive care services, that makes prescription drug benefits more affordable, and improves coordination of care and health outcomes, reduces errors, and reduces costs for seniors. They want to repeal the law that curbs the growth in Medicare spending, saves taxpayers almost $500 billion by ending overpayments to insurance companies, and extends the life of the Medicare Trust Fund for 12 years. Instead, the Republicans here in Washington want to end Medicare as we know it and put health care for American seniors at great risk. As a senior member of the Budget Committee, I know how important it is to find solutions to reducing the deficit. To do this right, the solution must include spending cuts, tax policy reform, and economic growth. We should not fix our budget problems by failing to meet our obligations to our seniors. Every day we hear how determined Republicans are to slash billions of dollars from essential programs because we simply can't afford it. They say we can't afford to make investments in the future. We can't afford to educate our children or fix our roads or fuel innovation or cover health care costs for seniors. Yet in the same proposal to slash Medicare and Medicaid for millions of seniors, Republicans make permanent tax cuts for the wealthiest 2% of Americans. In the very same budget proposal where Republicans take away guaranteed benefits for seniors, they protect billions of tax subsidies to the oil and gas industry. In the very same budget proposal where Republicans give seniors a limited voucher to pay for higher insurance premiums, they protect the Pentagon from spending cuts on unnecessary weapon systems. $1 trillion in tax expenditures, $700 billion in tax cuts for the wealthy few, $40 billion in tax breaks for oil companies, and billions of dollars to continue inefficiencies at the Pentagon. All of this spending is protected by the Republican budget, and instead they choose to slash benefits to our seniors and our disabled Americans. Budgets are about priorities, and they're about our values. Yet we should get serious about our nation's deficit, but let's be sure that our priorities are right and we do not threaten our obligations to our seniors, to our children, or to America's future.
The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Long, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor one of the cornerstones of American capitalism and my profession for over 30 years, that being auctioneering. Auctioneers sell approximately $25 trillion in assets each year in the United States, and this figure does not include the millions of transactions that occur online with online auctions. It's estimated that there are 20,000 auctioneers in the nation, the vast majority of which are small business owners. Auto auctions make up the largest volume of auctions, with over $80 billion in vehicles being sold by auctioneers annually in the United States. If you drive a used car, chances are very good it's been across the auction block. Auctions and auctioneers have existed for over 2,000 years. Auctioneering was fundamental in the creation of commerce here in the United States. Auctioneers first arrived in the United States when the Pilgrims arrived. You go to an auction in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Branson, Missouri, Tucson, Arizona, Portland, Oregon, Miami, Florida. Anywhere you go to an auction in this country, we all go by one handle. That handle is Colonel. You can walk up to an auctioneer in any auction in the United States. You don't know that auctioneer's name? You say, "Hey, Colonel." They'll turn around and answer you. Why, Colonel? That dates back to the Civil War in this country. After the Civil War, they needed a way to get rid of the mules and tack and things they had left over, supplies, so they did that by matter of public auction. They nominated the Army colonels to serve as the auctioneer. Now, they didn't have any professional training as auctioneers. However, they would just, "I have $1 for this saddle, $1.50. Anyone give $2, sold it, $1.50. So when you hear the term colonel, that's where it originated, back in the Civil War. Auctioneers were instrumental in the formation of early commerce by selling crops, imports, livestock, tools, tobacco, fur, and farms. Even President George Washington was a big auction fan and an avid buyer at public auction. For over 30 years, I had the honor of selling real estate at public auction. Did I sell depressed, distressed real estate? Once in a very great while. But I sold real estate as people's first option, not their last resort. So keep in mind, auctions can be a way to achieve the highest value in the shortest amount of time. You get a hot property, instead of having it listed and sold in 1 day or 2 days, put it up at public auction and see what happens. Every day, auctioneers work with banks, attorneys, accountants, businesses, individuals, and government agencies to liquidate property seized and surplus property. Auctioneers create a competitive marketplace and connect buyers with sellers every day. The National Auctioneers Association and its members strive to advance the auction methods of marketing and upholding the highest standards of professionalism to the national public. For over 20 years, National Auctioneers Day has been observed by state and local governments. For those reasons and more, Jeff Duncan, another freshman auctioneer, member of Congress here, and myself want to make this the third Saturday in April National Auctioneers Day. We'll be dropping a bill to that effect. This would heighten the awareness of people in the United States of the contributions made by auctions and auctioneers to the history of the nation and its economy. Auctions are the last stronghold of competitive free market enterprise system and continue to be the most effective means of establishing a fair market value. Also, one other thing, being an auctioneer in Congress, the way our debt is running out of control, they find it very handy to have Jeff Duncan and myself here in Washington. We are one of the few people that can actually keep up with the national debt. I'm $1 trillion, $2 trillion, now $3 trillion, $3 trillion, now $4 trillion, $5 trillion, $6 trillion, $7 trillion, $8 trillion, now $9, $10, $11, $11 trillion down here, $12 trillion, $13, you're out of here, $13 trillion, $14 trillion, now $15. I have sold at $14 trillion. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, we also can say those numbers backwards, so when we get the spending under control here, I'll be back. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Rangel, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I thank you for the opportunity to greet a group of ministers that have come to the nation's capital in order to support the resources to eliminate HIV and AIDS virus and infections. It is strange how God has made us forget the blessings that we have with good health until, of course, that health is endangered, and then we recognize that what we have depended on may be threatened or may be gone or may not even exist for the 40,000 people that don't enjoy health insurance. But because this disease has such a stigma, and because 1 million Americans suffer from it, and 500,000 Americans have died from it, it has been a very costly situation in terms of providing the medication it is to stop the disease and to prevent death, and death is certain without treatment. These ministers have formed some 20 years ago in a group that was headed by Deborah House, and today it is directed by C. Virginia Fields. And Pastor Calvin Butts from the Abyssinia Baptist Church, a landmark in Harlem, New York City, and the country, have brought together ministers from all over the country, as well as the National Medical Association and other outstanding people, to make people aware of the fact that this disease is not only caused by the infection of the virus, but is caused by reckless sex, unprotected sex, actions of men that in prison, actions that when they come home they transmit through sexual activities to their wives. And so to a large extent, it is the ignorance of people that have caused this disease to explode and to spread beyond the communities that it was initiated. It's cost a lot of money in order to make certain that we control the spread of this disease. But it doesn't really take that much money to be active in making certain that people are educated by the threat of those diseases. And that is why they come to Washington today when there is a belief that Medicaid that provides health care for the very, very poor, that it is not in jeopardy by people who want to transfer a federal, a national responsibility to the states, as we find proposals coming up this week. That is why Medicare, which is a national program, is being threatened by the idea that people can get a voucher and go out and get insurance from an insurance company. Imagine going to an insurance company, being infected with AIDS, a terminal disease, and seeing what costs the private insurance company would ask you for without federal assistance. And so it seems to me that all people, black, white, Catholic, and Protestant, could come together in terms of answering the question, how do you treat the lesser among us? How do you treat the poor in our community? And isn't it a fact that if we reach out a hand and provide the medicine and the support for those people who are infected with HIV and with AIDS, in the longer sense what we are doing is allowing Americans to be more productive, healthy, having healthy family and healthy children so that they will be able to get an education, a decent job, and provide America with the type of talent that is so important if we're going to meet the obligations of this new age where technology is going to be so important if we're going to be competitive. So now is the time where these ministers have come to our nation's capital, perhaps to reach out to people of all faiths, whether they come from the mosque, whether they come from the synagogues, whether they come from our churches, to go back to the biblical writings as we look at what we're faced with today. And that is, how does a great nation as the United States of America, how do we treat our powerless? How do we treat our poor? What opportunities do we have for people who are poor to leave poverty and move to the middle class? The answer to those questions, Mr. Speaker, is in our hands, and I do hope that we vote and do the right thing. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Spear, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise today once again to highlight the epidemic of rape and sexual assault in the military. As I said last week, the Department of Defense, by their own calculations, estimates that over 19,000 service members, mostly women, but some men, are raped or sexually assaulted every single year. And furthermore, only 13% report these rapes or sexual assaults. Why is that? Because the system of justice designed to adjudicate cases of rape in the military is in complete shambles. Victims are blamed, assailants are promoted, unit commanders whose promotions are dependent on the conduct and performance of the soldiers they supervise have an incentive to see that allegations are few and convictions are fewer. Meanwhile, what are we doing here in Congress? Over the last 16 years, there have been reports and there have been hearings, 18 of them. And we make lots of noise, but then nothing is done about it. As a result of this code of silence, the overwhelming majority of cases get swept under the proverbial rug. Last week I told the story of Technical Sergeant Mary Gallagher. The feedback I've gotten is considerable. A woman named Katie wrote on my Facebook page, quote, "I am one of those victim soldiers. Jackie, thank you for fighting for a basic right. I have no idea why this is still not being handled properly. I dream that soon women and men will be able to serve our country without the threat of rape that will go unpunished," unquote. But stopping military rape should be more than just a dream. It must be a reality. We owe our service members the same protection that they provide to all Americans. Today I want to share the story of Seaman Paniota Bersikis. Seaman Bersikis served in the Coast Guard from November 2005 to May of 2007. Her allegation is as follows. On May 30th, 2006, Seaman was raped by a shipmate when she was stationed in Burlington, Vermont. During a hike, her rapist threw her onto the ground, punched her in the face, and raped her. She reported the rape to command, who told her to cease speaking about it or she would be charged with the military equivalent of slander. She later obtained photographs and admissions made by her rapist through the Freedom of Information Act, but command failed to bring him to justice in any way. Instead, they forced Seaman Bersikis to live on the same floor with her rapist, where he would remain a constant threat. Command also told the seaman to work with her rapist and use the time together to, quote, work out their differences, unquote. Command was well aware, but did not stop. Further assaults and harassment of Seaman Bersikis continued. Instead, she was transferred to Boston, where Coast Guard personnel called her a, quote, liar, unquote, and a, quote, whore, unquote. When she was on base performing her duties, a group of Coast Guard personnel cornered Seaman Bersikis and tried to rip off her uniform. They called her a crazy, lying whore and said she would pay for snitching on their friend. They threatened to rape her again. When she reported this harassment, the Coast Guard's, quote, victim advocate, unquote, told her not to pursue disciplinary action because she would be seen as difficult. In addition, her appointed attorney said if her rapist did not have a history of sexual assault, quote, why would he assault anyone now? Seaman Bersikis was denied rank because of the pending investigation, despite the fact that she had met all the necessary requirements. She described her horrific ordeal this way, quote, if I told them that my house was broken into, not one person would question me, blame me, or say that I was lying. But when I say that my body was broken into, people automatically feel that they have the right to judge me, to doubt me, and to blame me, unquote. What a profound statement by Seaman Bersikis. She has now started the Military Rape Crisis Center to help her fellow colleagues and victims, turning pain into purpose. She is truly an American shero. Seaman Bersikis' story shows the urgent need to protect service members from abuse. On the same day that I delivered my floor speech last week, the Austin American...
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
And the House returns at noon Eastern today for legislative work. Members will begin work today on the 2011 federal spending